Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for joining me on the Marketing Resolution YouTube channel. Really appreciate your time in watching these videos. And as always, I encourage you to subscribe, like, and share if you enjoy these videos. Today, I have with me David Liddle from London, England. How are you, David?
I am very well, Natalie. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks very much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'm looking forward to it.
So, David, you and I are greatly aligned in our preference for the proactive approach and handling issues as opposed to conflicts or disputes. And so we are kindred spirits in that way. And I know that you have devoted the vast majority of your practice to doing just that. So would you, just briefly explain to me what the TCM Group and you do to provide these proactive approaches to business?
That's it. Well, Natalie, look, thanks so much for inviting me to do this today. It's really great to be here. And as you say, I have a real passion for using. I mean, I'm a mediator. I always say to people, if you cut me in half, find mediation running through me, but please don't cut me in half is all I ask. But nonetheless, I'm a mediator through and through. But I think I became frustrated. I mean, my background a long, long while ago now, in the 90s, was working in tough communities in the East Midlands and here in the UK, working with gangs and neighbour disputes and community disputes, working in schools, working in prisons, bringing empathy, dialogue, mutual respect, communication, of course, mediation into those environments. So I've seen mediation work and help resolve really tough, challenging dynamics within some really kind of very often impenetrable situations. And then around 2000, 2001, I started working with organisations to embed mediation programs and help introduce mediation. And it's fantastic. I love mediating. It's the most powerful, real exciting thing. And those people who are watching the video who are mediators will know what I mean, the thrill and the excitement of being a mediator. But it's also very frustrating. And I sometimes feel, and I have felt, that at the end of the mediation process, the parties tell me, David, why didn't we do this sooner? David, why weren't my managers equipped for having these conversations? David, why did the HR function polarize us and push us and pit us against each other rather than bringing us together and seeking convergence, promoting dialogue, creating insight, generating understanding? And the more I heard people saying this, the more I felt that as well instinctively, I started to look at my clients' organizations and I asked them some simple questions. Why do you create confrontational policies and rules? Why don't you train and support your managers to have these conversations? Why do you leave it so long before you resolve an issue in the workplace? And people looked at me and they didn't have answers, Natalie. They didn't know why they did it. So I started to offer up some ideas and alternatives to integrate mediation principles, processes, and the philosophy much further upstream into the rule book, into the processes, the policies, into procedures, into management capabilities and competences. And there began for me a beginning of a journey, the resolution journey, if I can use such a term, towards a more proactive approach.
Well, you and I have talked about this previously, and that is definitely my preference. And it's my preference, this proactive approach that you take, it's my preference for so many reasons. It is, one, for a business, much less expensive, and that's really important. But it also does a couple of things. It encourages communication. It reduces the opportunity and the likelihood for issues or conflicts to ooze their way into the corporate culture. I mean, it has so many great benefits. When you talk to your clients afterward, they must have such a great sense of relief and appreciation and adoration almost of these processes that you've helped them create for their companies.
It's incredible that they can't believe that something that for you and I and for mediators out here will know is so simple. Something as simple as two people talking and listening, dialogue. They can't believe that it's as powerful as it is. It's almost like we've gone in and sprinkled fairy dust across their organisation, and we haven't. We've just helped people to sit down and do the thing that we know is important, which is to talk, explain what's happening for me, to listen and to be empathetic. And what I find really surprising, once we've got over that initial very positive response, we go back and say, well, what can we do to create an environment and create the conditions for a more constructive resolution at an earlier stage? So in some respects, whilst I might be the beginning of helping to generate the genesis of a resolution approach, it's the clients who I find actually run with this and become incredibly imaginative and start to see places and spaces where they can put dialogue, put resolution within their organisation. So it feels like a real partnership develops with the organisation.
And you're right. I think for the first time that people have access to these sorts of tools, it does feel like sorcery or, witchcraft or, some sort of magic of some sort.
It does.
And for us, it's an everyday conversation. But it is really, truly the loveliest thing to watch people go, oh, that's amazing. It really is a very fulfilling work. So you've got a really nice website, the TCMgroup.com, correct?
Thank you. Yes, we have, yes.
And so at the TCMgroup.com, when I was looking over your website most recently, you've got some great resources. You've got, a way for people to connect with you and contact with you and ask some questions, get some examples of what they could do, how they can do it, how best to use your services. Because I know that you don't prescribe to a one-size-fits-all mentality, and that when you work with clients, you customize your services to fit their precise needs and goals and endeavors. Have I got that correct?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And that's something I'm really passionate about, is how can we use our skills as mediators, actually when we're beginning to, through our marketing processes, through our sales processes, getting the clients through the funnel, managing that whole sales process, that whole experience. And I find the mediation skills particularly about identifying and understanding needs and taking the time to understand the needs of the client, not walking in with a one-size-fits-all prescriptive model. And what I find within the mediation community, it's a wonderful community, but it can sometimes feel a little evangelistic, in my view, a bit preachy. And we go into the client organisation with, we know what works for you. And I find clients don't want that. Their organisations are very unique. They're very passionate and energised about their organisations. They know they're not perfect, but they don't want people to come into their organisations and preach to them about the wonder of mediation, although we know it's wonderful. What they want to do is they want to be heard, they want to be listened to, and they want the methodology that we would then develop and design for their organisation to be very clearly aligned to their needs, be they cultural, around leadership, behavioural, systemic, structural, resource-based. So when we start a conversation with a client, it's very much around what we call a 3D approach. We discover what's happening for the organisation and spend a lot of time asking questions. We then diagnose based on what information and data we're gathering, what the challenges are, what the pinch points are, what the issues are. And then we move into the third D of the 3D model. We then design an intervention and package of support for that client. And for a large bank like HSBC, that might be very different. For a police force like the Metropolitan Police, the principles run through it are very similar. And thematically, it might look very similar, but actually it's very much designed and tailored around the organisation. So I really appreciate you have identified that, because it's an important part of how we work.
Well, it's my pleasure. And it was one of the things that I really liked about your business model, was that you appreciate that my company is different and unique. My employees are different and unique. The diversity amongst us as an international work group is different and unique than other groups. Our needs are unique. The relationships that we build are strong. They are important to us. And, probably like most people worldwide, we spend more time with our coworkers than our spouses or our children. And so having someone validate the importance of how we communicate, how we resolve things, so that there isn't a dispute, there isn't a conflict. We don't, as much as I love the resolution industry, the best day ever would be that no one needs our services. And that would be the penultimate excellent results, in my opinion. So teaching us as humans how to establish these kinds of protocols, I think, is not just super important, but really admirable. And I greatly appreciate the work that the TCM Group does.
Thanks, Natalie. It's really interesting. I often think of us as mediators. Well, firstly, I think of myself as a PR agent for conflict. So the first thing I do is I go into organizations and help them rethink conflict and start to get excited about conflict. I always sort of start off with, who would have thought conflict could be such fun? So you're starting off thinking of conflict not as a threat, but as an opportunity and something to be engaging and embracing. So that's my first analogy. And the second one is I think of myself as a dentist. You know, I often think to myself, who would want to go to see a person having sharp instruments stuck into my mouth and lie there like this? But we know we need to do it. Now, what I think mediation is mediation's the root canal work of the dentist industry. We know good oral hygiene is important, so checkups, checking out, making sure that we're okay with each other. It might be uncomfortable conversations, it might be difficult conversations that we're checking out and we're checking in. And actually that prevents us from the decay and the dysfunction and the distress that can come about when teams and relationships break down. Let's think of that as the root canal work. So a trip to the dentist might be much like a trip to the mediator or a trip to having the conversation that we need with each other. It's important, and if we don't do it adequately and we don't do it sufficiently, then we need costly and painful root canal work. And at worst, we may need the extraction. Let's think of that as the lawyers. Let's think of that extraction as litigation. So PR agent for conflict and a dentist, neither of which I have any particular expertise in.
I've never heard anyone make that analogy before, and it's absolutely spot on. That's an excellent analogy. I'm going to use that in future. That really sums it up really nicely. Well, David, I want to thank you so much for your time, applaud you for the work that you do. Again, for the viewers, it's the TCMgroup.com, and I know that David is, although super busy, he's always available to answer your emails, pick up the phone, answer your questions, and chat to you about your concerns, your questions, and respond to any requests that you have. He's just the loveliest of humans, one of my favorite colleagues. So contact the TCM Group if you have any questions at all about this kind of proactive response to your company mergers, acquisitions, cultural issues, conflicts, disputes, interdepartmental concerns, whatever your concern might be, contact David. He's one of my favorite go-to guys. Well, David, I really appreciate your time.
It's been an absolute pleasure. So I was just washing in the accolades. It was lovely. That's so kind of you to say that. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for inviting me to do this, Natalie. The best of luck. I think it's brilliant that they're helping people to tell their stories, and you're bringing them together, bringing this sort of body of knowledge together. It's great that you're doing that and taking the initiative, and I'm so pleased to be part of it. So thank you so much.
Thanks. Make me blush a little bit. Thank you, David. Listen, everybody, once again, if you enjoy these videos, please subscribe, like, and share them with anyone that you think might benefit from these kinds of services. And as always, be good humans. Until next time.